Well, good morning, and sorry for the slight delay here this morning. And we had a few problems with setting up the live stream here. It's a problem of using multiple cameras. There is the technology to broadcast to multiple video platforms, but it's a little bit beyond my budget right now. Anyway, as you can see, it's an absolutely stunning morning, but I think this is the case pretty much right across the country. And the price we pay for that, of course, is that it is somewhat crisp. But nonetheless, I hope all those that are camping elsewhere around the UK at Leith Hill, at Preston New Road, at Kirby Misperton, and at Misson, and anywhere else that has a protection camp that I've forgotten of right now, then I trust that you are staying warm, and of course you are getting a lot of support from your local communities. Well, I appreciate that I've got the sun on my back here coming straight into the lens. So there we go. Let's put the sun in my eyes, and hopefully that's a little bit of a better picture for you guys. Well, it's the morning of Monday, 5th of February 2018. And there can be little doubt that the country is literally on the cusp of an absolute fracking nightmare. It would seem that Third Energy, having now published their accounts, seem to be confident that they are going to get the sign-off by Greg Clark, the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, anytime soon. Over the weekend, it seems that a lot of kit was being moved around, and it looks as though Third Energy may actually be preparing for some kind of site inspection. And having been told that Greg Clark is happy with the 13 technical criteria to give them the go-ahead, it now comes down to the analysis of their financial resilience, and of course perhaps a site inspection from the health and safety executive, or whomever they appoint to conduct such an inspection. Well, as we've seen from the aerial photographs, the site is a mess. It is a disaster, simply waiting for Greg Clark's signature. And on Thursday, I'll be back in the studio for an edition of Fracking Nightmare. And on Thursday, we'll be doing a more detailed analysis of the financial information of Third Energy that is in the public domain. Now, we will have to speculate on the information that's not in the public domain. But from what I and others can see, from what has been made available, Third Energy, which of course is Barclays Bank, trading as Third Energy, is a dog. And the only way in which there is really any possibility of financial resilience is for Barclays Bank to effectively underwrite all the potential liabilities. Now, Barclays Bank isn't doing too well. Their stock price is not necessarily going in the right direction. And of course, this is a tremendous opportunity to continue the campaign to tag a Barclays. So, let's continue to raise awareness in communities all around the country that Barclays is absolutely on point here for triggering the fracking nightmare. If Barclays pulls the plug, then the bottom line is Third Energy has no safety net whatsoever. And let's not forget that the 50+ million that Third Energy owe, this is Third Energy onshore, of course Third Energy offshore owes some 40-odd million, but so the 90-odd million that these two Third Energy entities owe is reportedly owed to their parent company, which is conveniently registered in the Cayman Islands, which basically has, well, zero transparency. So there's no possibility of actually getting access to the financial resilience of the Third Energy holding company. But of course, ultimately, that is underpinned or not by Barclays Bank. So, let's not hold anything back here. This is Barclays Bank working, with the British government to try to establish this abominable agenda that most of us, or everyone watching this, knows fine well that ultimately that will result in a level of devastation, nothing like we've seen before in this country. So, Third Energy up at North Yorkshire, hoping that sometime soon, because basically today is day 88 of the kit sitting on the well site there, waiting for Greg Clark's signature. Now, to this point, of course, he's done the right thing by not signing. And, one can only really draw the conclusion that if he ultimately signs, based on information that's in the public domain right now, if he ultimately signs, then sadly, he will simply prove that, he is the stereotypical ambitious politician. But this time round, he will have made the wrong call. He will be getting enormous pressure from many, many quarters to sign this off. But, if Greg Clark is his own man, which unfortunately few in politics are, but if he is his own man, then he will do the right thing. But don't hold your breath, because sadly, I can't think of a single politician that has been elevated to the cabinet in any government that really is their own man. They are all in the hock of the paymasters, of the corporations. And let's not forget that the newly appointed directors of Third Energy are major Tory contributors. So, massive conflict of interest here, of course. But, elsewhere in the world, this would be labelled as corruption. But because it's done here, it seems to be sort of acceptable practice. But nonetheless, keep the pressure on. People in Tunbridge Wells, of course, you're not a million miles away from Leith Hill. I appreciate it's another county, so it may be off your radar. But nonetheless, it is still in the southeast of England. And hopefully after my visit to Leith Hill at the back end of last week, and my live streams last week, hopefully the Leith Hill Protection Camp had a lot more visitors across the weekend. But it shouldn't stop here. Of course, people from the southeast of England, and as I said on Friday, nearly 1/4 of the country's population lives within a 75-mile radius of Leith Hill. That's some 15 million people. And it's a sad reflection of modern society that few of those 75 million people probably even know where Leith Hill is, let alone have visited what is one of the most outstanding beauty spots in the southeast of England, but which Europa are determined to effectively destroy by putting a well site right in the heart of the ancient forest on the slopes of Leith Hill, and somehow get their convoys of infrastructure up these deep sunken lanes, which actually just defies belief. And if they think that they can get through, a couple of miles of forest without there being any opposition, then somehow I think they're very much mistaken. So, we've got the issues very much in the north of England, obviously, right now, with KM8 at Kirby Misperton, of course, with Prestonnew Road and Quadrilla, and then iGas at Misson Springs. And iGas, and I'll come on to INEOS in a second, but iGas is another dog company. Their stock price took a bit of a tanking after Cheshire County Council rejected their application to go and do some flow testing at their existing well in Ellesmere Port. But just to put it in perspective, 4 years ago, almost exactly, the iGas stock price was £1.40. Well, if you look at the iGas stock price today, you'll see that it's about 82 pence. And so you think, oh, £1.40 to 82 pence, that's not really too bad considering what's happened within the industry. But that's not really the full story, because actually the real stock price is not 82 pence, but 4 pence. Because not too long ago, iGas decided that they had to make the stock look more attractive. So they issued one stock for every 20 that was already out there. So the real value of iGas stock today, compared to the £1.40 of 4 years ago would be just 4 pence. Or if you want to put it in their new money, then 4 years ago, the stock price would have been over £30, but today it's 88 pence. So that really gives you the lie of the land. And nobody in their right minds, of course, would invest in this company. It is unfortunately the domain of the mug punter, just as it was 4 years ago. And if you look at the iGas chat forums, the stock chat forums, you'll see that 4 years ago they would say, no, Crane's wrong, everyone else is wrong, you know, we're getting this time next year we're going to be multi-millionaires. No, you lost pretty much everything. And anybody who puts money into companies like iGas, then call it a hunch, but you know, you're going to lose everything. So you might make a piece on the short term, but you have to be very quick every time the stock price rises above what you paid for it. And of course, let's not forget, in most cases, you're paying 30% commission when you're trading in these dog stocks. So my counsel is don't touch with the proverbial barge pole. Now, of course, the focus is very much at Misson Springs, where iGas are still working, despite the fact that Clause 21 in their original planning permission should have forced them to stop work on January 31st. But a council officer has, of course, succumbed to probably nothing more than a simple meal. I hope that's all it was anyway. And simply struck through Clause 21 and said, no, don't worry about that. You just keep working, at least till March 31st. Should have finished by then, right? This is outrageous. But of course, nonetheless, it actually helps us see just how corrupt the British establishment has become. And that, you know, rules and regulations and planning conditions that are put in place, supposedly to protect the communities that they represent, actually don't mean anything at all. They're not worth the paper they're written on. And this is simply an industry that will do whatever it takes just to ride roughshod and to get its bits in the ground. But of course, as we all know, there may be more than that. And you know, just a reminder here, and you know, I was reminded of this over the weekend. Every license holder, part of their conditions is that by the year 2021, they must have drilled at least one well to a depth of 4,500 meters. Now, you know, this is 4.5 kilometers. So, you know, these are deeper than you know, some of the wells that are being drilled right now at 3,000 meters or 3,500 meters. You know, 4,500 meters. Now, it doesn't say that these wells have to be fracked. Now, but call it a hunch. But I would suggest that this is part of the agenda to establish the network of deep wells for the ultimate disposal of toxic nuclear waste. And this Trojan horse, which we've been discussing now for 4 years plus, has never been refuted, either by radioactive waste management or the British government. And anyone who asks any questions about this simply gets the brush off. Because this is something that the government, of course, and the radioactive waste industry does not want people to know about. But, you know, if you don't know about it, then you're not going to stop it. Because the Infrastructure Act has been amended so that the government can literally sign off on the disposal of pretty much anything in these deep wells without consultation with the local community. So if you want to stop the ultimate disposal of toxic nuclear waste anywhere near your community, then you have to stop these wells being drilled in the first instance. And of course, you know, this is what we're up against here. And within the next week or so, maybe, then we're going to see just how corrupt the Westminster cabal really is. Because, like I've said, there is absolutely no way that anyone in their right mind, anyone thinking rationally, logically, correctly, would dismiss this application from Third Energy, Barclays Bank trading as Third Energy, and tell them that there's no way you have the financial resilience to be able to deal with any potential problems. Not least, of course, that what Third Energy are doing, or Barclays Bank are doing, is they're building up massive tax credits so that in the unlikely event that the company does actually start to generate revenues in excess of their expenses, then they won't be liable for any taxation whatsoever, because they will have all of the previous debt that they can use to write off any tax liability. So it doesn't matter how you look at it, you know, there is nothing about this industry that serves the British people. In fact, quite the opposite. So, you know, the good news is that, of course, more and more people are starting to realise what's occurring. There was a fantastic turnout at Miston Springs last Thursday, the 1st of February, and hopefully that can be maintained. But Miston Springs is in a really difficult location. It's right up in northeast Nottinghamshire, just across the border from South Yorkshire, just across the border from North Lincolnshire. And sadly, there are still people, of course, in South Yorkshire who will refuse to do anything to assist anyone in Nottinghamshire. And that's a legacy, unfortunately, of the miners' strike in '84. And, you know, it may still be a few generations before that is put to rest. But, you know, this is an issue of absolute national importance. And, you know, all we can ask is that people put aside their differences and, you know, really do whatever it takes to focus on this. It's so important that, you know, we agree to disagree on almost everything else, perhaps, and focus on what we do agree on, which surely has to be protecting the ecological integrity of this country. Well, yesterday in The Sun, and I know, of course, nobody in the Liverpool area will have read this, but there was a small article on page 4, and it said, "Fracking hits cops." And it's so short, let me just read it. It says, "Cops have been forced to stop catching drug dealers to manage anti-fracking protests. Top-level papers show that policing the demonstrations across the country has cost £12 million and resulted in more than 800 arrests. Police in Sussex were forced to suspend drug operations for a month to focus on the protests. Other forces told of the knock-on effects to their normal services and finances, according to information obtained under Freedom of Information laws." Well, of course, this is a combination of factors, not least the fact that the police are being deliberately decimated in preparation for the privatisation, just like the NHS is being decimated in preparation for, well, the almost completed process of privatisation. And in Lincolnshire, we already see pretty much everybody except the frontline police wearing G4S logos on their epaulets. So you can see what's coming. So the reduction of police, but more important than that, it's the focus, isn't it? It's the focus that the police are being instructed to address the most unpopular policy of the only party in the country that supports it, as a preference over dealing with other crime. And the cost of 12 million, and of course that's probably a conservative estimate, but you know, Quadrilla have been bragging that they've pumped some 6 million into the local community over the past 13 months or so. Well, you know, the 6 million that they've contributed has barely addressed or covered the costs of the policing of that operation. And if the British government thinks that the opposition isn't going to increase, then, well, the obvious question, what planet are they on? But I think everyone watching this knows the answer to that. Now, INEOS, of course, are also still attempting to ride roughshod, and in fact, every step of the way, INEOS, Jim Ratcliffe and Tom Pickering in particular, show that they have total disregard for the British public, or for the British ecology, or indeed for British legislation, or British values even, because they are simply trying to ride roughshod at every step of the way. And they really don't give a damn. They just do what it takes because they can, because they have the money. Well, tomorrow night is the first event in North Yorkshire. The events are entitled INEOS, Fracking and You. And the first event tomorrow night is at Strensall Village Hall. That's just to the north of York. Strensall Village Hall at 6:45. And there are other events later in the week, and I'll be talking about them as they come up. So if you're in the North Yorkshire area, then do get along to one of these events. I think they're going to be incredibly informative. I'm hoping to get along to one early next week, and I think they will be extremely insightful and help the local communities understand the sort of attack that they are under from the corporations. Now, I'm just going to close today because many of the people watching will know that for the past decade I have hosted an annual conference which looks at the evidence to show the magnitude of assault on humanity from so many different angles. And the reason that I have focused on fracking for the past 5 years is because if we do not stop this agenda, then everything else almost becomes an irrelevance, because you know, the country will literally be devastated to the point of large tracts becoming uninhabitable. But my next conference, these conferences are called the Alternative View, and the next one is AV9, and although it's number 9, is actually 10 years since the first one was held in the southwest of England in 2008. But if you want to take a look at this event and you want to meet other people who are beginning to realize that the magnitude of the assault on humanity is something that has to be addressed collectively. You know, we either join forces to address this assault, or, well, you know, the alternatives are perhaps not even really worth thinking about right now, because they are so horrendous. So the title of the AV9 event, which is going to be held in the first weekend of May, is Humanity on the Cusp. But the issue is, on the cusp of what? Because the multi-pronged attacks that are going on humanity right now will be addressed at this event with speakers who are specialists in their fields. And last night I posted one of the most important presentations from the last event at AV8, and this was a presentation by Dr. Graham Downing, and who is very much on point on the research of the artificial intelligence and transhumanist agenda. Now, that may seem a long, long way from fracking, but it really is important that people start joining the dots, and that's the purpose of the Alternative View events. So, you know, if you're interested, then consider coming to join the 300 or so people who will be under the same roof for the weekend, looking at ways in which humanity can regain its sovereignty from this corrupt cabal that only serves the corporations who have an agenda of greed, and more fracking greed. So the information on the conference is on the website of www.alternativeview.co.uk. Well, that's it from me today. I shall be back tomorrow at 8:30 with a further live stream update. So thanks for joining me. Enjoy this beautiful day, but if you're anywhere near Kirby Misperton, Misson Springs, Preston New Road or Leith Hill, then please do take the opportunity to go visit and support those who are on the front line against this insidious agenda. You have a great day.